Welcome to The Power of Potential, a podcast hosted and produced by St. Rose High School in Belmar, New Jersey. The show is dedicated to helping parents navigate the world of private education while showcasing the potential of its students, teachers, and alumni. St. Rose High School has been empowering potential since 1923. Now, here are your hosts, Director of Communications, Michael Falgaris, and from the class of 2024, Ariana Simon.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Power of Potential podcast. I'm Michael Falgaris.
And I'm Ariana Simon.
Welcome to episode 8. Can you believe it? We're here at episode 8.
I can't believe it.
It's gone fast.
It's gone so fast.
And we're here right at the bell, the Sisters of St. Joseph, or the sisters who really founded St. Rose High School. We're coming up on our centennial. Do you know what that is, centennial? What number that is?
That's 100 years.
That's right, 100. Mm-hmm. You got it. In class of 2023. So in 1923 was when we first started, and here we are approaching 2023, 100 years. And so we're excited to have two of the Sisters of St. Joseph here with us today, Sister Marie O'Hagan and Sister Kathleen Boyle. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Happy to be here.
So, sisters, I thought it would be great if we could get together just to learn a little bit more about the history of the Sisters of St. Joseph, how they founded their order, how they came to America, you know, the history behind St. Rose High School, and then just kind of learn a little bit more about both of you.
Okay. All right.
Sounds like a good plan?
It's a great plan, right? It's the plan we planned for, so that's good.
So, good.
That's the thing you kept to the script.
I kept to the script. Tell me first just a little bit about you, as yourself.
About myself?
Yeah.
All right. So, Sister Marie O'Hagan, I was born in Philly. This is my second little stint here at St. Rose. I worked here in 99 to 2010, then took a little trip to some other places and returned 3 years ago because I love St. Rose. I love St. Rose. I love the opportunity to be part of the St. Rose community. So I've been teaching for about 40 years and enjoying every moment of it. So.
And what about you, sister?
Okay, I'm also from Philadelphia originally. I was taught by the Sisters of St. Joseph in elementary school. And I entered the community. I've been in many places. I never actually taught in Philadelphia, which my mother always said, why can't you ever teach in Philadelphia? I always seemed to be out of town, and I'm heading south. So most of my missions have been down south. So actually St. Rose is one of the closest places I've been to home when I came to St. Rose.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah,
yes.
I didn't know that.
And I've been here 15 years now, so I have loved every minute of it.
So tell me a little bit about how you individually, what made you get into becoming a nun and going into that order? Because I know my understanding is you can choose the order that you want to be part of.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Oftentimes people say, "Why did you choose to be a sister?" And for me, it's actually a feeling of being chosen. That someone chose me to do this particular ministry or vocation. So I grew up in a family where faith was important, as well as looking out for people who are in need. And I think those two elements work together to give me the feel that a vocation to religious life would fit my faith and my desire to help others. So I had the Sisters of St. Joseph in high school. They attracted me to their work because they were happy. They were kind and loving to each other. They were good teachers. They cared about people, and that was attractive. So after college, I went to college first, and I taught for a year in order to prepare myself to say, yes, I will enter the convent. I entered without thinking I would ever stay, and really, I didn't. I thought I'll be too homesick, but you know how God is. He gives you graces to do what you think you can't. So again, that was about 40 years ago, and it's been marvelous.
Did you ever have to wear a habit?
Yes, we did have habits. Certainly not the habits. So I found the yearbook here. So these are sisters from the early days.
Oh, so, look at that.
I know.
These were not habits. You've seen those photos.
Yes.
Ours was a more modified habit. And there was a blessing to it in people recognizing who you were by what you wore.
Sure.
But in the later years, we let go of the habit with the idea that people would recognize us more by who we are and how we interrelate with people rather than simply what we wear.
Yeah. My elementary school, we had Sisters of St. Lucy Filippini, and they wore habits. And so when we came here, and you're both sisters, and it was like a moment where I was like, oh, you don't wear habits.
Right.
And it was kind of different for me to go from that to you wearing like normal clothes.
Right.
But you can like kind of tell, even though you're not in a habit, that you're sisters and that you're kind and all of that.
Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you.
It's working. What about you, Sister Kathleen?
Okay, well, when I was in senior year in high school, I never thought about being a sister until I was a senior. And it all came about because all my friends were going to be nurses, and they all wanted me to be a nurse, and I just knew I could not be a nurse. And I always thought that I would be a teacher, but I never thought about being a sister. And one night I was sitting in my bedroom, and I was really sitting at my desk doing my homework, and I was looking out my window, and I'm thinking, okay, now what am I going to do? Everybody's already settled. Here I am, senior. I don't know what I'm going to do. And the thought entered my head, why don't you be a sister? And I'm like, where'd that come from? And I was like, no, forget that. Like, push that out. Yeah. So I kind of did. And I didn't enter right from high school. I worked for a year because I decided I would just work for a year and think about what I wanted to do. And I kept trying to push that thought out of my head because I wasn't a, what do you call it? Excited about that at first, but it never went away. That thought always just sort of stayed in my head. So I think God just kept saying, come on, this is what I want you to do. And I finally realized that really was what God wanted me to do. So I took the steps that I needed to do, talk to people and so forth. And I had been praying about it. And I never looked back. I never regret it. I just always knew from the moment I entered that it was really the right thing. And it was what God wanted me to do.
It's such an interesting story because I think some people think that it is something that you always wanted, you looked at that vocation, that's something you always wanted to be a part of. Mm-hmm. But to hear that was something that maybe entered into your head and you were trying to kind of push it down, but that it was continuing to come to the surface.
I also think my dad had a part in it because my dad was very faith-filled. Well, so was my mom too, but my dad, he was so excited when I told him I was going to be a sister. I got this feeling like, I wonder if he's been praying about this forever. Like, I wonder, I did. I used to go to Mass with him during Lent, every Lent. And I used to think, he's probably kneeling there praying next to me that I would become a sister. It was probably, because he was so happy when I told him I wanted to become a sister. So that's what made me think that.
Can I piggyback on that?
Yeah.
Speaking of dads, it's interesting. I did not know this, but when I told my father that I wanted to go in the convent, he went upstairs to his bureau drawer and got out a prayer that he had prayed since he got married, a prayer for a family vocation. And he had always prayed, and I guess back in the day of our parents, that was a desire of theirs, that someone in their family would become religious. And the funny thing was, my sister had seen the prayer once, and she said to me, I'm glad it was you, because I knew it wasn't me, and I didn't want Daddy to be disappointed.
Well, because I always think, what do parents think?
Right.
Because I think sometimes they have this vision of what they want their child to become, starting their family and what that life will bring. Mm-hmm. But to hear that both of your parents were supportive of it.
Yes.
Yes.
And then maybe even prayed for it.
I don't think my mom was as excited. I mean, she was okay with it, but I don't think she was as excited as my father. Matter of fact, he was telling everybody before I even got accepted. And I told him, please don't tell people, because if I don't get accepted, I'm going to be so embarrassed that the nuns didn't even want me, So I said, Dad, wait till I'm accepted, then stop telling people, So, yeah, he was, So my grandmother actually told me that my dad almost was a priest until he met my mother. He was thinking about being a priest. And then my grandmother told me that story. And she said, I often think that your father was hoping or praying that one of his children would have a vocation, because then I guess it would help him not feel as guilty that he didn't follow, being a priest. But, yeah. So.
Well, it is always something that has been on my mind when I was much younger. Mm-hmm. But it was always that barrier of not being able to have a family that prevented me from moving forward to the next steps. And maybe we have a great campus minister here, Mr. Petrillo.
Yes.
I know he started that process,
right?
But perhaps as we grow in the future, things might change. Do you see things changing even in your last 40 years in the Catholic Church?
Well, certainly. So let me just make a comment about the children part. I think part of the gift, many gifts of teaching, is that the students you teach, they're not your children, but spiritually, there's a spiritual relationship there which fulfills, I think, some of the family desire that one would want. So it's a real gift and blessing to be part of education, to have those children and not have to pay their college tuition.
But not every sister is a teacher.
No, right.
Right, because we have a convent here at St. Rose,
Right.
and you have many sisters that are not involved in education.
Right. There's a wide variety of ministries that we are involved in. And I have a feeling that in each ministry, the relationships that we have with families, with single people in our work, fulfills part of that generativity that people desire, to either to have children or, in a sense, to have a spiritual mothering, so to speak.
And I piggyback on what Sister just said. I'll use your terminology. You become part of. You don't realize how much you become part of other people's lives and their families. Just an example, a friend of mine who I've been friends with for 25 years, her son, I met her when her son was only in second grade, and he just got married 2 years ago. And when he was getting married, she said to me, I really want you to be at the wedding, but Jonathan just wants family at the wedding. He just only wants a very small wedding, and he just wants family. And then she said, he asked her, and then all of a sudden I got an invitation to the shower. I'm thinking, okay, well, if I'm not going to the wedding, but I'm going to the shower. Well, here, and I called her. She said, I can't wait till you got that. She said, Jonathan called me the other night and said to me, Mom, what's Sister Kathy's address? And so she said, what do you need her address for? And he said, well, Mom, I need to send her an invitation to the wedding. And he says, well, you told me you only wanted families. That's why I didn't say anything to her. He says, Mom, she's been part of our family since I was in second grade. She's family.
Wow.
And so I think that just sort of brought that home,
What a good story.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you chose the Sister of St. Joseph's because they seem to be having fun.
Exactly.
And fun's important, right?
Exactly.
Right.
And did you feel the same way?
I felt like I really fit with the Sisters of St. Joseph. I did have them in grade school. All through grade school. But then when I went to high school, the high schools in Philadelphia, they had many different religious communities teaching within the high school. There was 5 or 6 different religious communities. Okay. And so all of a sudden when I just became obvious that this is what God wanted me to do, I'm thinking, well, how do you decide? How do you decide all these different communities? And then it just really came down to like Sister Marie said, where I felt like I fit the best. And as I did investigate the different communities, I actually went to their mother houses and everything. But when I got to Chestnut Hill, I just felt at home. I felt like I fit here, And again, I think later on after you enter, you learn it's the charism of the sisters and their sense of welcome and caring and hospitality and so forth. So I think that's probably why I felt like I fit there.
So give me a little history about the Sisters of St. Joseph and Chestnut Hill and how it all came to be first in Philadelphia.
Great. Okay. Well, we would trace our roots back to France in 1650. There were a group of 6 women, and they wanted to live a religious life, but one that was different from what was commonplace at that time. Women religious at that time were secluded, contemplative. They did not go out into the world to do works. They stayed in one place. Well, these 6 women didn't want to do it that way. They were living in a very, poor. It was a poor time in France for many reasons, and they wanted to go out into the community. So under the guidance of a Jesuit priest, they began a religious community that was more apostolic than contemplative. So it was revolutionary at that time, although we know we have both lifestyles now. There are contemplative sisters and apostolic, meaning you move out into your ministry. So those sisters, they were in existence for a good number of years, and then when the French Revolution came along, they were sequestered. The church had many problems. 5 of the Sisters of St. Joseph were guillotined at that time. Yes,
really?
Yes, you could lose your head as a sister back then.
Because they left?
No, because of the troubles between the church and people. The church was so connected with the government, and there's historical reasons that I can't get into because I don't remember them all. So I guess maybe about 100 years after that, the congregation was refounded. And in their refounding, America, of course, had been discovered, and the immigrants who came to the United States needed assistance. So the Archbishop of St. Louis asked for sisters to come. So the first Sisters of St. Joseph went to St. Louis, which makes sense when you think of the French. They landed at New Orleans, up the Mississippi River, established themselves in St. Louis as the first Sisters of St. Joseph Mother House in the U.S., and then the Archbishop of St. Louis had a brother who was an Archbishop of Philadelphia. And he asked, send me some of those sisters. And the motto that was verbalized at that time was that these were women ready for any good work. So the works were diverse. Most people associate religious life with teaching, but there's a great diversity. And that diversity has kind of revived itself since Vatican Council II. So sisters came to Philly. And then from Philly, we went to Brentwood, we went to Pittsburgh. There's a lot of foundations in our country now, and we're connected. We have a federation of sisters, even though we're independent from each other.
And so there's multiple mother houses.
Right.
Multiple mother houses, right. Some of those mother houses are combining, consolidating, because there are, as we know, a lessening of vocations to religious life. Similarly, there's a lessening of marriage commitments, and there is a little commitment issue, perhaps. So we have about 600 sisters now of Philadelphia Sisters of St. Joseph. Although when I entered in 1977, there would have been 2,200.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
That's
Right.
considerably less, right?
Now, the numbers will never become high again because, in a sense, that was an anomaly in history that there would be so many sisters. So
In the 70s, or just because all along because you continue, it's a lifelong commitment, and it just a lot of people during that time, and it just keeps compounding.
yes, but I think the experience that people had where maybe a school would have 20 sisters, that will never happen again. Now, I perhaps should say not never, but those numbers were not the norm. If you go through church history, religious communities were never as large as they would have been maybe in the 50s and the 1950s and 60s. They were never that large. However, that being said, I don't know about Sister Kathleen, but I firmly believe there are young people being called to religious life who are either not aware of that call, are afraid of a commitment, or haven't been fostered to consider that as a viable way of living.
Well, maybe you can speak as the youth here, but when you were sitting at your desk as a senior looking out, you're kind of like reflecting. You weren't in front of a phone or a device that you're always engaged with. Do you feel like as a youth that you're less reflective?
I mean, I think I'm the anomaly because I think a lot, maybe too much about all that stuff. But I feel like now, because we have so many things to distract ourselves from going to church and even just praying, that it's way harder for to have that moment of where you're just sitting at your desk and then you have that thought in your head and it won't go away. I feel like that doesn't really happen anymore because everyone is always so preoccupied with technology or their friends that are texting them or whatever it is, that you kind of miss out on those moments where you could possibly realize a big life-changing thing, but you never let yourself anymore. And I try, and sometimes I fail, but I try my best to really think about what I'm doing and if the decisions I'm making are right for my future and all of that, because it's important. And I think that every decision you make leads to the next step. Even each of your decisions to go and spend a year before you decided to join the order, it's that year was what you needed before you could join. So I think that having that time to think was extremely important, and it still is, but I feel like kids my age don't think it's important anymore.
Which is similar to a gap year now, they call it.
Yeah.
I also, just back to a little bit of the history for a minute, I think it's just interesting to mention that St. John Newman had a big part in our community settling at Chestnut Hill. And we actually have his chalice in our archives that he used whenever he said Mass at our mother house.
And he was
he was
a bishop.
He was a Redemptorist, and he belonged to the Redemptorist community. But he was the bishop. He became after. Was he right after Ken? He was the fourth bishop of Philadelphia, and he had a major part in our community being at Chestnut Hill. And like I said, we have his chalice in our archives from when he used to say mass for us at the Mother House.
So how did it go from Philadelphia to Belmar and St. Rose and the founding of our school? Do you know a little bit about that history?
Yes. Well, my understanding is St. Rose High School started in 1923.
Right.
And so the pastor of St. Rose, which I believe his name is McConnell, he's established an elementary school. He wanted sisters. So he would have asked the bishop of the diocese, who would have then written to religious communities, can you send some sisters here? So that would be how that started, the religious communities. So people have loved St. Rose for all these years. Mm-hmm. So although the school itself is not like our school, Sisters of St. Joseph,
right.
We have academies, there is the spirit of the Sisters of St. Joseph throughout this community.
Because if it wasn't for them coming,
yes,
it might not have been founded.
That's right. And what we call our charism, each religious community.
What are the charisms?
Right. Each religious community has its particular spirit and its particular mission. So our mission is unity and reconciliation. That is the key part to anything that we do as sisters. So including people, right? Building that sense of family, which is here at St. Rose.
Huge. It's like number one thing people say about St. Rose.
And then the other one is hospitality. Our charism which goes hand in hand with unity. People need to feel comfortable and at home, right? So that they're the two aspects of our life that attract you.
And our mission is that we work that all people will be united with God and with one another. So it's that whole relationship idea. That's just part of our DNA.
Which your work now would be more important if you think about history.
Exactly.
Right.
Yes.
This is also the year of St. Joseph.
Yes.
So how does St. Joseph play in the Sisters of St. Joseph?
Yes.
Because I know we had a whole like the slideshow that I'm showing here that you put together on St. Joseph. Is there anything that?
Yes, our community, obviously, our founder named us the Sisters of St. Joseph. So the name came from our founder, Father Pierre Medaille. He was a Jesuit priest in France, and that's who we were founded by. So he gave us the name, the Sisters of St. Joseph. But for us, St. Joseph, if you notice in Scripture, St. Joseph never says anything. He's sort of, he's a presence, and you hear about him, but there's no recorded words of Joseph in Scripture. So, but yet he is such a major figure in the birth of Christ and all that happened there. And so, that we're very, part of our charism too is to be very like unassuming, like, we do things very quietly, like Joseph did. There was I don't know who it was that they asked. I forget who it was. I don't know if it was a priest or someone, and they said if the bishop asked, there was this mountain, and they wanted it in Philadelphia, and they wanted it moved. And they said, if they asked the Sisters of Immaculate, if they asked the Sisters of Mercy to do it, there would have been TV cameras and everything, and they would have moved the mountain, but everybody would have known about it,
Right.
If the Sisters of the Immaculate Heart, moved a mountain, they would be very, tedious about it and making sure everything was planned out and whatever. And when the Sisters of St. Joseph went to move it, it would have been moved in the middle of the night when no one knew, and the next morning the mountain would have been moved.
Right.
And so that's kind of like reflective of who we are. I remember here at St. Rose, actually, we had somebody who wanted to, it was all about marketing our place. Like this was a few years ago when Sister Kathy was still here, and they brought someone in, and he said, you don't talk about yourselves enough. You don't, put yourselves out there.
Yes.
And I remember raising my hand and saying, well, that's because that's part of our charism. We don't like put ourselves out there. We just sort of do what we do, and it gets out there, but we don't promote it in a sense. Do you know what I mean? We're just concerned about, and so that's sort of
which is very interesting to also hear again. So we know the history now. You fill this in on that. Tell me where you think, where are we going next? Where do you see this, whether it's the sisters or yourselves? I know you both are making moves in your career, if I call, or your vocation. Just wanted to share a little bit about that, because this whole episode, or the show that we have, is about potential.
Yes.
So I feel like we're always working towards living up to that potential.
Yes.
You know,
Yep.
where do you see yourself in that goal of living toward your full potential?
Right. Well, I guess I have to be honest, and this would go back to Joseph. Joseph was a listener. So our potential is based on our listening to God. So where does God want us to go next? So praying, spending time in contemplation, and listening for that next step. So as Sisters of St. Joseph, our next step always depends on, where does the world need us? Where is there suffering? Where is there disunity? And how can we be there in order, not ourselves to bring unity, that would be, a little conceited, but to work with God's grace to create unifying situations. So my sense is it will never be as clear-cut next steps. It'll just be like sleeves rolled up, ears attentive, and eyes on God's people would be a phrase that we would use. Where are we being called to?
Yeah.
Right.
What about you?
Just to be like that, to be open to any and all good works. That's what we've always been. Whatever is needed, we try to fill that need, like wherever the need is. We got into education because at that time there were so many immigrants. That was the need for education. But now that's not so much so now. And so all these other needs have opened up. And so we're trying to respond to that. We have sisters who have gone to the border. That was a need, all the immigrants and all that was happening at the border. And so some of our sisters responded to that and went to the border to work at the border. So it's sort of, as Sister said, it's evolving. It's wherever we feel called, that God's calling us to use our gifts.
And are you free to move? Like if you said, I want to go to the border, after the school year is closed out, are you allowed to just go?
Yes. The community will support that, yes.
So where is God calling you? Where's the need for you? I know Sister Kathleen, are we able to share that you're moving on from the classroom,
right?
But still staying within the order, and you going out to Philadelphia,
right? Yes, and this is kind of again another thing where you listen to God's call, and actually this the role I'm going to fulfill in our community is called an area delegate. We have 3 of them, so I'll be one of 3.
Oh, wow.
And we take obviously our president and our council, they can't get around to all the sisters in the community, all the different convents. So we sort of go visit the convents and visit with the sisters, and bringing and then anything in concerns or anything or any good things, we all bring that back we bring it back to the council and to the president. We're there. Actually, one of the area delegates, when I said to her, like, what else do you do? I know that piece you do because the area delegate visits us every year. So that's the piece they do. But she said the best way she explained it to her family was that you're between a pastoral counselor and a social worker, but for our sisters. Do you know what I mean? Like there's so many pieces to it. And I had my first meeting last week at Chestnut Hill about some of the things I'm going to be doing. And I was like, oh my gosh, I had no idea it was all these things, But as far as coming to the decision to feel that's what God was calling me to, for the last 6 years, a couple of times when the area delegate's term was up, they put out names of sisters they think would be good for this position. So my name has surfaced over the past 6 years several times. And so the first 2 times I just said, nah, I don't think I'm called to this right now. And I said, no, I don't really feel right now this is where God, because I certainly wanted to stay here at St. Rose and whatever. But this was like the 3rd time now. And I thought, okay, God, I think the 3rd time, maybe I should probably,
you're telling me something.
I should probably be listening, So when you stay in the process, it doesn't mean you get the job. It just means you, among other sisters, have chosen to stay in the process to see, who's,
But you called it a term, so does that mean is the term 3-4 years?
Yes, well, actually, your first term is 3 years, and then it can be renewed for 3 more. And if you choose at the end of 3 years that, okay, I think I'm ready to go. That you can opt to leave after 3 years, or you can have it renewed for 3 more years. But 6 years is the limit of the term.
And then when in 6 years you could move on to something else.
Right.
Got it. Interesting.
I didn't know that. That's interesting.
Yeah, and that there's other opportunities. And sister, you're also making a decision.
Yes, so I'm not going to be working in a classroom anymore here at St. Rose, but I'm going to be helping out in the library. And then I'm also dabbling in spirituality programs, finishing a spiritual direction certificate program, and then working on some spiritual opportunities for people, which is a great love of mine. And in our talking, I'm remembering DJ Schlegel, who graduated from here in 2002, when I asked what was the purpose of religious life. He said, to point out the good that's left in this world. I loved that. So I feel the spirituality part, as well as anything that I do here, that part of our role is to point out the good that's in the world. People need to see that and be reminded of that. So whatever we're doing, that's what we are called to.
And we're going to take a quick break here, but when we come back, I want to highlight something that you do in your classroom every day to highlight the good that's happening in the world and how it's kind of been paid forward back to you. We're going to take a short break. We'll be right back.
Be right back.
Choosing the right high school is critical. Finding the right fit is key. At St. Rose, we teach our students to push the envelope, to look beyond themselves, and to discover their full potential. Be more at St. Rose. To watch and listen to the show extras or to check out the show notes from today's episode, visit srhsnj.com/pop.
Right, to get our show extras, to see the behind the scenes, to see the photos from the yearbook of the sisters back in 1960, visit us at srhsnj.com/pop, and also to see the little video that we're going to show right now. So tell everyone that's listening what you do every day, or I guess every so often in class, how you incorporate
every day in class.
Every day, okay.
Well, actually, going back to that quote, to point out the good that's left in this world, I feel as a teacher, how to help the students see there's so much goodness in this world, and it isn't always brought to light. So what I always did in the beginning of my classes here for the past 3 years is I showed a video of a story that was filled with good news for people. And I used the CBS newsman, Steve Hartman. He was a Friday night news person and a Sunday morning. And he would have clips of about 3 minutes of a story that had phenomenal lessons of people's goodness, overcoming tragedies, reaching out to others. So I would show it at the beginning of class. We would talk a little bit about it. The prayer would kind of be based on what we learned from it. And I will say that was probably the very best part of the class. The kids loved the stories because we're basically attracted to goodness.
Yeah, I think so often on the news, all we hear is like terrible stories of bad things that people have done or bad things happening in the world. And we kind of miss out on that goodness that of people, and people lose their faith in humanity a little.
Exactly.
Like watching the news and having those 3 minutes, even just in the beginning of your class. I wish that like every day I would do that. I should start doing that.
And the students remember it. I had a teacher in my class when I was in high school. She read from the Chicken Soup series. And every day in the beginning of class, she would read it. Her class had nothing to do with religion. It was a business class. But I remember that class. I remember those stories. And I got hooked on them. And then I started doing that when I became a teacher. So I think your students, from what I understood, they remember this.
Yes.
And what did they do? Tell everyone what they did.
I frequently would say, I should write to Steve Hartman and tell him and yada, yada, yada. And the kids know that I love him. And they contacted him and asked him to send me a congratulations on your retirement message, retiring from teaching.
Teaching.
And
He did.
he did. He did, Steve Hartman.
And the kids showed it to you. I haven't watched it yet. You just sent it to me. So we want to share. Can we watch it?
I'd love that.
You recorded a video. It's a little loud. I don't know if you'll be able to hear it. You want me to send it to you? What do you want me? You're lying. I'm not lying. I swear. You want to go over there? Maybe you can hear it? I can try and play it, but... No! Yeah. You're kidding me. I'm not kidding.
Hello, Sister Marie. It's Steve Hartman from CBS News.
How great is that?
Oh my God, it's Steve Hartman.
Steve Hartman.
Did you show this to anybody?
I just wanted to congratulate you on your retirement. I know you're not really retiring, kind of moving into the library, but you're celebrating the end of 40-some years of teaching, as I understand it. So congratulations on that. And I also wanted to thank you. I mean, very sincerely. I've gotten lots of awards and honors over the years, but the greatest honor I just found out about recently, and that's the fact that you have been showing one of my stories every day. We have teachers that show them maybe once a week or once a month, but as far as I can tell, you're the only one that shows one every day, and you show them in your religion class, which to me is one of the highest honors. You and I are obviously of like mind, that if you're kind and you have strong character and you follow the golden rule, that everything else falls into place. So I'm just flattered beyond words that you chose to include me in your lessons. So thank you and congratulations again.
I can't believe that. Are you filming me?
Because just gonna send it. I'm gonna send it. We're gonna send it to Steve.
I can't believe that. My hero.
Wow.
I know. Steve Hartman.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean,
that's amazing.
first of all, you got to talk about I love a stove in the background.
Oh,
Yeah,
yes,
it's
yes.
a very
I mean,
cool house.
I don't know where,
Yes.
but
New York.
that he took the time
Yes, yes,
to send you that message. And
Right.
He could tell he appreciated it.
yes. And
Yes.
I'd like to add to that. I'm certainly grateful that Steve Hartman would do that, but Christian Chinery and Trevor Donnelly were the ones who wrote to him. So to have two students who knew how much I cared about the videos, that they would care that much to pay it forward, impresses me even more than Steve,
Wow.
or makes me feel grateful even more than Steve.
I reached out to Christian just this morning just to see. Let me see if he wrote back to me. I wanted to see because apparently they took a video of you.
Yes, I didn't see that. They took a video of my reaction to Steve Hartman.
Yes.
Watch it.
I'm gonna put it on my Facebook page, which has thousands of followers.
Yeah, you say it.
So you want me to say thank you, Steve Hartman?
Sure. Kyle, I'm sending a message to him. I'm sending it to him. So.
Steve Hartman, you made my day, week, month, year. Life is a little too dramatic. I want to thank these guys, Christian and Trevor, who sent my name into you, and thank you. And I intend to write you a letter, a real letter. Thanks a bunch. All right? Bless you and your sweet family.
Sister Kathleen, you have anything else you want to share?
No, I think,
Is it going to be bittersweet for you?
yes, it is going to be very bittersweet. You know, obviously I've loved my 15 years at St. Rose. Most especially, well, I love teaching the students, but of course my time on the bench for the basketball, for the girls basketball, and that meant a whole lot to me. They did a wonderful tribute to me at the girls basketball banquet. That was really very nice. And then, and certainly Kairos. Kairos was probably the favorite thing I did here at St. Rose. And the 15 years I was here, I'd done 43 Kairoses.
Wow.
So, so my friends used to always say to me, you're doing another Kairos. Aren't you tired of Kairos? And I'd say, I never get tired, because Kairos is the same retreat, but it's different each time because the students are different, and the students make the retreat, you know, and it's just so wonderful to see how God works through the speakers, the student leaders, speakers, and the adult speakers, and just how God touches their hearts on that retreat. It's just, I never cease to amaze me to just watch. You can almost physically watch God touching their hearts and seeing the difference it makes in their lives.
I need to get.
I received many letters afterwards from students that just told me how much that was like the most significant thing in their high school, you know, time. So
I believe it, because when I interview the seniors, that's what they say, and then but they don't share anymore. They're very tight-lipped about it, but it makes me want to at least one time in my time here to be able to get to a Kairos
I
to be
can't
able
wait.
to feel.
I can't wait.
It's a junior and senior thing, or just seniors?
Well, it's seniors, and then in May we usually invite some juniors to go because they need to have a Kairos before they could be a leader in the fall, like for their own classmates. So
Got it.
Yeah.
And then you're also leaving the convent because your job is taking you to Philadelphia?
yes, I'll be leaving Belmar, and I'll be working. My office is at our mother house at Chestnut Hill, so
Okay.
my office will actually be there. But I'm living in a convent in the area, just down the street from the mother house. So
So what's going to happen to because in the convent here, there's a special room called the Philly room, or what's going to
well, I
happen to
think
that
Sister
room?
Marie will keep that room.
I'll
going.
be there.
Okay.
She'll still keep the Philly room going. Yes, we do. That is
Sports room.
That's the sports room. Like you watch all the
Yep.
we watch the
Watch all
sports
the
on that
games.
TV in that room. Yes.
Well, I'm going to miss you. It's a pleasure to be working with you over
thank
the
you.
last
I
5
certainly will
years.
miss being here at St. Rose.
I wish you all the very best, and I'm glad that you'll still be around
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
and
And I
share.
want to thank you and you, Ariana, for including us in the podcasts and your manner.
It's
It's always a pleasure.
And it's a pleasure, really, talking to both of you. It like, even though we only talked for half an hour,
Yep.
I feel like hearing your stories kind of made me think more about like the things that I do in my life and how maybe I could be a little bit better in like being religious and praying and everything like that. So thank you.
You're welcome.
it's good to know the impact that you make on people's lives, and sometimes you don't hear about it right away. But to know that it is being done,
Yes.
and that your work is being done quietly. Well, we're not quiet.
No, no, we talk a lot.
And we have more episodes of the Power of Potential podcast. I hope you enjoyed this episode.
Yes,
School's almost over,
I can't believe it.
but I know that you're going to be busy this summer with classes, and we're going to be recording other episodes. So I hope people stay tuned to that. Again, to get more of our episodes, take a look at our show notes at srhsnj.com/pop. Make sure you subscribe, like, right? All those good things.
Yes, you have to subscribe and like and listen to all of them.
Yes.
They're all very interesting. I've enjoyed recording all of them.
Thanks for listening and watching, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Power of Potential podcast. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please share it with others. Subscribe to hear past and future episodes. Learn more about St. Rose by visiting our website at srhsnj.com.